Clerk, will you take the roll?
Representatives Cassada, Cooper, Doggett, Eldridge, Grills, Johnson Knox, Leatherwood, Mitchell, Rudd, Sexton, Sherrill, Travis, Warner, Weaver, Vice Chairman Byrd, Chairman Wendell.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Any personal orders? Announcements? If not, the sponsor of House Joint Resolution 150 is excused this week. Therefore, we'll roll the bill till next week. Next item up is House Bill 33 by Representative Cooper. Representative Cooper, you have a motion? You got a motion? You got a second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized. I think we've got some amendments on the bill, but you're recognized, Representative Cooper.
The amendment. Okay. Let's see the amendment. Well, House Bill 33 designates the space known as Legislative Plaza as the Ida B. Wells Barnett Plaza. And it removes the requirement to display the General Assembly flag at the plaza, removes the requirement that Department of Safety officers provide policing services to the Legislative Plaza. Look at that now. That, in essence, is what the bill does. Just names the plaza. It says that the space is vacant. And pursuant to the language of this legislation, space known as Legislative Plaza shall be known as the Ida B. Wells Barnett Plaza. The open space does not currently have any signage designating it as Legislative Plaza, and this proposed legislation does not necessitate signage. Therefore, renaming the open space will not result in a significant increase in state expenditures.
Representative Cooper, we need to take a vote on the amendment. We've got a motion on the bill, a second on the bill. Is there a motion on the amendment? Got a second? Motion second. We're now on the amendment. Representative Cooper, please explain the amendment and how it impacts the content of your bill.
I was trying to. You have my amendment. Thanks. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. The amendment, number 1, 004468, deletes and replaces all language after the enacting clause, designates the open space and not the attached buildings known as Legislative Plaza as the Ida B. Wells Barnett Plaza, creates a separate account within the general fund to be used for the design, construction, installation, and maintenance of signs for the plaza, requires signage to be erected using private funds, removes the requirement to displace the General Assembly flag at the plaza, removes the requirement that Department of Safety officers provide policing services to the Legislative Plaza. The fiscal memo is unchanged from the original fiscal note, non-significant. And the Senate passed on second consideration, referred to Senate, State, and Local Government Committee on 2/10/2021. If no other questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Any questions for the sponsor? You recognize.
Yes, is it my understanding that we're doing away with law enforcement on the plaza?
I didn't understand you.
I said, is it my understanding that we're doing away with law enforcement on the plaza?
Gonna do away with it. Would you repeat that, please? I don't understand what he's asking.
Chairman. Representative, I can't speak for him, but I believe his question is, how does your amendment or the content of the bill impact the Department of Safety's jurisdiction on the legislative, currently the Legislative Plaza, to be named the Ida B. Wells Plaza? I think his question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it appears his question concerns what the jurisdiction of the Department of Safety is on the, currently the Legislative Plaza or the Ida B. Wells Plaza after it's renamed.
It seems to
is that
me,
correct?
Yes, sir.
as I've read it, that they will still have jurisdiction on policing. The Department of Safety would have that responsibility.
And at this point, if there's no
know-
objection, I'm going to let our counsel explain what the content, what the net
That'll be
impact
fine,
would be.
that'll be fine.
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Is someone here to explain the council?
Yes, please. Is that okay, Representative?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We're going to go out of session with that objection and let our counsel explain what, or basically answer your question.
Zach Brown, Office of Legal Services. So Section 5 of the amended version of the bill reads, Tennessee Code annotated Section 4-3-2006A2 is amended by deleting the Legislative Plaza. That section of code deals with the Department of Safety's Division of Protective Services. The subsection or the subdivision in question reads, this division of protective services shall exercise the powers and duties formally imposed upon the Department of General Services to provide police services by sworn officers for the state capitol, the Legislative Plaza, the War Memorial Building, and all state office buildings. And so Section 5 removes the phrase, the Legislative Plaza. So based upon that text, the powers and duties of this protective services division would not apply to the Legislative Plaza.
Certainly, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, would you repeat that and summarize in what he's saying, what he read there in that code?
Yes, ma'am. My understanding of the bill as drafted is that currently the Department of Safety is directed to provide police services to certain enumerated buildings and areas in and around state buildings around the Capitol. And safety's here. Of course, we don't have 24-hour notice, but we might need to take this up at a later date. But this bill would change the current language to delete Legislative Plaza from the jurisdiction that has been provided by statute to the Department of Safety. And in layman's terms, Davidson County, Metro Nashville, Metro Police have jurisdiction in this county, in this city, by statute. But the General Assembly has also provided concurrent jurisdiction by statute to the Department of Safety for certain enumerated buildings and areas. And currently, what is called the Legislative Plaza is one of those enumerated areas where the Department of Safety provides police services. And if that's incorrect, straighten me out. Right. Right, all state office buildings and also enumerated areas. There is some, I think the question goes to, does your bill impact the authority or the responsibility of the Department of Safety on that particular area? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's my understanding, and I think that's where the question comes from.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still not really clear on this, and I apologize for not talking with the Department of Safety if they had a problem, if anyone has a problem with this.
No, I'm not sure he's got a problem,
No,
and I think we want to work with you.
Yes, sir, that's okay, that's fine. I just want to be clear, and I want every member on this committee to be clear, too.
Sure.
About what it is. I did not know there was a problem with the language as far as policing. is concerned with the plaza. I understand from what I read in this amendment, and I was trying to get clear on that. Is it someone from the department here?
Yes, ma'am. But may I make a recommendation? And
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not trying to take over. I want to make sure that you're respected and you receive your the time you need for this. But it may be best to put Department of Safety on the calendar for next week and let them testify as to what their position is and with respect to providing security for not just state office buildings, but for this plaza. And if you're agreeable to that, if not, I mean, I'm not going to make the motion, but that might be something that the committee might want to do as a group, because it might be helpful for the members of the committee to understand exactly what impact that this particular amendment has, in addition to renaming what is currently called Legislative Plaza to Ida B. Wells Plaza. What other impact your bill has on the
Right.
jurisdiction of the law enforcement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I just say roll it for next week, too?
Certainly.
So,
And if you want to answer some more questions today about the content
Yeah,
of
I
the bill
wanna
besides that, we'll do that. We'll go back into session if there's other questions, and we'll try to get the bill prepared if there's other questions, but then we'll roll it after that. Is that okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
But I just want to make sure that you're given as much time as you need, and I want to make sure that you're accommodated.
Yeah, I wanted to be correct, too.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're back into session. There's further questions of the sponsor. You recognize Representative Rudd.
Not so much a question as I guess a statement, Mr. Chairman. You know, we've had, of course, decades of Democrat rule, and now we have a decade of Republican rule, and we name parks and buildings and roads. The one thing that even after almost 100 years of continuous Democrat control up here, they never named Legislative Plaza or the Capitol building after any person. And I kind of feel that's because the plaza and the building is neutral, and it's not really been meant to be named after anyone, Democrat or Republican or an independent. And I just personally, my feeling is that it shouldn't be named after anyone. That's just my feelings. Thank you.
Representative, you want to respond? Or? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Representative.
Representative Johnson, you recognize, and then Leatherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for bringing this legislation. I think that it's Women's History Month, and I think it's a good time to bring this legislation and time that we start recognizing some women in Tennessee. And I think that a place where people's voices are heard regardless of their side of the aisle, recognizing them with someone who honored hearing the voices of the people is the perfect thing to do. And I think it's, I especially appreciate that it's also a woman. Thank you.
Representative Leatherwood, you recognize?
And Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, you're
okay.
recognized, Representative.
And I just would like to say thank you so much. I noticed in the Blue Book that the state recognizes Ida B. Wells in the book on page 611, just a statement, and the Historical Commission with a story on all of the work that she did and that she did on civil rights and also just for human rights. I have some information, and I don't know whether many people really know much about Ida B. Wells, although she's been recognized across the country, even internationally. She was an American investigative journalist, educator, and early leader in the civil rights movement. She was one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and over the course of a lifetime dedicated to combating prejudice and violence and the fight for African American equality, especially that of women. Wells arguably became the most famous black woman in America. And with the state even recognizing her in those special great documents that are put out each year, and especially our Blue Book, and we do that every 2 years, where they recognize how much she had done for America, and as a journalist. She was Born in slavery in Holly Springs, Mississippi, Wells was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation during the American Civil War at the age of 16. She lost both of her parents and her infant brother in the 1878 yellow fever epidemic. She went on to work and kept the rest of the family together with the help of the grandmother. Later, moving with some of her siblings to Memphis, Tennessee, she found better pay as a teacher. Soon, Wells co-owned and wrote the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight newspaper. Her reporting covered incidents of racial segregation and inequality. And in the 1890s, Wells documented lynching in the United States in articles and through her pamphlet called Southern Horrors. Lynch Law is all its phases, investigating frequent claims of whites that lynchings were reserved for black criminals only. Wells exposed lynchings were reserved for black criminals only. Wells exposed lynching as a barbaric practice of whites in South used to intimidate and oppress African Americans who created economic and political competition, and a subsequent threat of loss of power and political competition, and a subsequent threat of loss for whites. A white mob destroyed her newspaper office and presses as her investigative reporting was carried nationally in black-owned newspapers. She did a lot to help our society here in Tennessee. And subjected to continued threats, Wells left Memphis for Chicago. She married Ferdinand L. Barnett in 1895 and had a family while continuing her work writing, speaking, and organizing for civil rights and the women's movement for the rest of her life. In 2020, Wells was posthumously honored with a Puzzler's Prize Special Citation for her outstanding and courageous reporting on the horrific and vicious violence against African Americans during the era of lynching. She came to Nashville and worked. She has done a lot here in her in her lifetime. She had done a lot for our state of Tennessee, and she's so recognized across America. And I'm not going to go on because there's so much. I have a stack of things, and I know you don't want to take the time for me to read all this, Mr. Chair.
Representative, we've got as much time as you need, but next week we'll be back, and you can have all the time that you want. We're going to respect you, and the committee is going to give you as much time as you need, and we certainly appreciate that. We appreciate your contributions
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the committee, because these are needed, these questions are needed. Sometimes we just don't know our history, and a lot of things we don't know. We just don't know everything. And sometimes it's brought to our attention and can be appreciated. I do when I learn anything, because I'm a tired teacher. So I like learning, and I'm still learning. There's so much knowledge out here that we can't know everything. So I'm just bringing it here to see if we could honor Ida B. Wells, because she had done so much for the state of Tennessee.
I respect you, and next week we'll start over again. And one more question from Mr. Leatherwood, and we'll.
Just a clarification. Am I correct? Is this the second calendar today, and next week it will be the third calendar
That's
for
correct.
this bill? Okay.
Any further questions before we roll it 1 week? Representative Cooper, we'll see you next week, and whatever time you need and whatever resources you need, we're willing to provide that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee.
Yes, ma'am. Without objection, rolled 1 week. Is there any further business? I want to take a personal privilege and recognize one of our colleagues, or one of our former colleagues, Josh, waving the back row there from just north of Nashville. We're glad to have you back. And with no objection, we're adjourned.
I made your committee longer than it would have been.